The city of Boston, Massachusetts wants to make it impossible for landlords to see eviction records and do proper tenant screening. And I think it's a bad idea. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's coming out of the city of Boston, Massachusetts. So obviously Boston is on the East Coast, more anti-landlord, more progressive, more anti-property rights. Basically, don't be surprised by anything that you see coming out of a place like Boston, okay? So the law that they're proposing would basically make it impossible for landlords to see eviction records because they would be sealed. And you know what? I have a big problem with that, a really big problem, because just like most landlords, I use eviction records in order to screen my tenants, in order to put the best tenant in my units as possible. Now, they're taking that ability away from the landlords in Boston and telling them, hey, just throw your unit, your multi-$100,000 or $1 million unit to the wind, because you have to put in there who we tell you to put in there. You cannot do tenant screening, like all these different laws and rules that they think that they're going to help with helping keep people housed, right? But they actually have the opposite effect. They make it so that landlords have to increase their screening in some other way. And some of the way that they increase their screening is by just increasing the rent, by making the rents as high as possible so that you don't get these bad tenants up in your units. So, obviously we don't want people in our units who have an eviction history. That's one key factor right there. This person has a history of not paying rent, or at the least not paying rent on time. So I even like to see eviction filings, because this person might not have been evicted, but why were they not evicted? That's the real question, right? Did they still not pay their rent? Yeah. Did they maybe catch up with the rent, but they have a history of paying late? Yeah. Did they maybe just decide to leave and then the landlord decided to drop the eviction? Well, yeah, these are all possibilities, right? But that doesn't mean that the person is a better tenant. No, it actually means that this tenant is still pretty bad and that I might not want to rent to them. But that should be a choice that is left up to the individual landlord, okay? There's plenty of landlords out there who say, okay, I am willing to accept this tenant who has an eviction on their history and, take my chances. But there are plenty that don't. And that's what the problem is. Like they want to force our hands, those of us who don't want to deal with people with evictions, and make us do something that we don't want to do. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. So all the landlords on here, what is your personal preference when it comes to people with evictions on their records, okay? Mine is, I don't care how old it is, I'm just not renting to you, okay? There's a lot of landlords like me. There's some landlords who say, okay, well, if it's over 5 years old, then I'll take that person into consideration. Some people just say, I don't care how old it is. I rent to the lowest common denominator, so I'll rent to anybody, even if they have an eviction on their record. That's what some landlords do. But it should, like I said, be up to the individual, in my opinion. So anyway, let me get into this article, tell you what the city of Boston is trying to do. This article is coming from hoodline.com, and it says, Boston City Council backs legislation to seal eviction records, aiming to safeguard tenant housing opportunities. Yeah, they think that this is going to safeguard tenant housing opportunities, right? But they never take into consideration the effect that it will have on landlords. I mean, I would ask a landlord, before you pass any piece of legislation, what exactly the issues that landlords are going to have with this piece of legislation? How is it going to affect your business? How is it going to affect the way you operate? Because if they don't talk to a landlord before passing these laws, then they're just being stupid. Okay, they're just being stupid. They're looking at everything from a one-sided perspective, and what they're going to end up doing is either driving landlords out of business or forcing us to raise prices. So anyway, let's see what the article says. In a move aimed at supporting housing stability for tenants, the Boston City Council has backed legislation designed to help renters avoid the stigma of an eviction record that can haunt them in their search for stable housing. This comes at a time when tenants make up the majority of Boston residents and nearly half of all Massachusetts residents, as reported by the City of Boston. The proposed law, H. 4356, or the Act Promoting Housing Opportunity and Mobility Through Eviction Ceiling, responds to the crisis of over 1 million evictions filed in the state over the past quarter century. So yeah, they're talking about 1 million evictions over the course of the last 25 years. Yeah, that's not as many as you would think, okay? So honestly, a lot of those evictions are, they just have happened over the course of a very, very long period of time. It's not really a epidemic of evictions. It's not like there's, just some kind of crazy, outrageous number of evictions. But what it really falls down to is it kind of shows you about how housing affordability has changed, okay? How less people are able to afford housing. Now, my personal belief has always been that in order to get housing costs to lower, you must increase the supply or decrease the demand. And honestly, they haven't worked on either one of those things enough, especially when it comes to affordable housing, housing for the middle class and lower classes, okay? Currently, these records are easily available to future landlords and can seriously impact a person's ability to find safe and stable housing. Given that a significant portion of the Boston populace and Massachusetts residents consist of renters, the impact of this bill could be quite significant, according to the City of Boston. Eviction records chronicle any legal disputes involving tenants and landlords, whether the tenant was sued or initiated the suit themselves. So, kind of a misleading thing. They're like, oh, well, more than half of the population is renters, so therefore this legislation will help all those people. Well, the only people who are going to be impacted are people who are renters who have been evicted before or who have had eviction filed against them before. Okay? That is not the majority of people. That's actually a very small minority of people who've actually faced eviction. Most people pay their rent on time. Most tenants are doing everything right. I would say that probably 10% of tenants are the ones that would benefit from this. The other 90% aren't going to see any benefit at all because they always pay their rent. They have no issues with their landlord and they go about their business. So, very misleading. You'll probably have a 10%, and we're talking about the 10% that I'm talking about is going to be the people who are on the bottom rungs of the economic ladder, people who make the lowest incomes. Those are the ones who are the most impacted by evictions. So, obviously that is a problem. It is a problem that these people are facing eviction. However, once again, I don't like the idea of blaming the landlord for that, because we don't know why these people faced eviction. Did they face eviction? You know what? It doesn't even matter why. It doesn't. For whatever reason. Remember, your problems are your problem. If you lost your job, that's your problem. If you had a sickness in your family, that's your problem. Okay? Your bills are your problem. So, it doesn't matter why. I know that sucks, like when I read these articles, they always talk, this tenant had this medical emergency and then lost her job, and she's a single mom with 3 kids. And, I know you're trying to garner sympathy, but everyone, and I mean literally everyone, has something going on all the time. Okay? And, just like when I have a relative who passes away, or I get sick, or I get injured, my bills still have to be paid. I don't get a break because of that. I don't get to say, well, I'm not going to pay my bank this month because, I hurt myself on the job and I wasn't able to go to work for the last 6 weeks. Nope, I can't say that. Okay? Just like you, we all have to face these facts. And, I know that you wish that someone else could pay your bills for you, but that shouldn't be your landlord. You don't expect your auto loan provider to pay the loan payment for you so that you can keep driving your car. No. So why do you expect your landlord to do that? You don't expect the grocery store to say, you know what, we're just going to give you this free food. No, but you expect your landlord to give you free housing. Crazy how this stuff works. But anyway, I disagree with this, and it's kind of a one of those things where if you don't give the landlord the ability to properly screen their tenants, then they're going to get bad tenants in there, and then they're going to end up losing money. That's what happens. So let me go over a little bit of the details of this bill here. Bill H. 4356 plans to construct avenues for tenants to seal eviction cases from their records, particularly in instances where a case is dismissed, resolved in favor of the tenant, or in situations categorized as no-fault evictions. With these provisions for automatic sealing, the council intends to strike a balance between protecting tenants' reputations and maintaining landlords' rights, all the while helping renters escape the shadow of past disputes and secure housing without the burden of their eviction history. Yeah, they always say, oh, we're going to protect the landlord's rights, but you're taking the rights away from the landlord by taking their ability to screen tenants away. So immediately, this is a false statement, okay? This only benefits the tenants. It does not benefit the landlords in any way. Do you think it benefits the landlord to not be able to tell, well, this person had an eviction filed against them because they didn't pay any rent, but then they moved out and then the landlord dropped the case, but now I'm renting to this person and now he's not paying me. How does that benefit a landlord? It doesn't, okay? So let me know what you think in the comments down below. I'll put a link to the article in the description.